Welcome back. Let's now discuss list comprehensions. List comprehensions are a unique way of quickly creating a list with Python. They basically allow you to build out lists using a different notation, essentially allowing you to create a one-line for loop built inside of list brackets. The syntax can be confusing at first for new recruits, but breaking it down step by step will hopefully make it all clear. In order to do this, let's jump to a Jupyter Notebook and show you the syntax. Let's begin with a simple example using a for loop. We'll start off with an empty list called myList. And let's imagine we have some sort of string, s, and we'll assign this string some string. Now, imagine we wanted to somehow get every single character to be an individual element in this list. What we could do is we could use a for loop, saying for letter in the string s, take my list and append that letter to the list. And if I run this and check the result of my list, now I have back a list where every single element is now the characters that we were iterating through in this for loop. Let's now show how we could do the same task using list comprehension. We'll begin by actually deleting this first line, my list, since we don't actually need to define that yet. And what we're going to do here is we basically change this append statement. Instead, what we do is we take this letter, cut it, and put it in front of here. So we're saying letter for letter in S, and then we get rid of the append, and we get rid of this colon. And then we put this inside of brackets, and that is the list comprehension format. You say element for element in iterable and inside of brackets, and then we can have this be my new list, and that is list comprehension, essentially similar to a one-line for loop. And if we check out my list against my new list, we get the exact same results. So let's walk through a couple more examples. Let's imagine we wanted to get a list of a bunch of squared numbers. What I could do is say squares is equal to, and here I'm going to say x to the power of 2 for x in range, we can say 0 to 11. And then if I take a look at what squares is, it's these numbers squared. So it's the numbers in range 0 to 11 to the power of 2. So again, the general syntax is element for element in some sort of iterable, either range or a list or another string, etc. So let's show another example called evens. And here we're going to create a list of even numbers. We'll say x for x in range 0 to 10. And if we run that and check evens, we get back the actual numbers. In order to get only the even numbers, we need to add some sort of if statement. And the if statement we're going to say is if x %2, and that's mod 2, or modulus operator, is equal to 0. And then I only get back the even numbers. So let's quickly explain what this mod operator can do, in case you haven't seen it before. What mod operators do is they return the remainder after a division. So you can imagine that 4 divided by 3 is 1.3333. But the remainder off of this is 1, because 3 goes into 4 once, remainder 1. So if you say 4 mod 3, you'll get back the value 1. If you say 5 mod 3, then you have remainder 2. And if you say 6 mod 3, you have remainder 0 because 3 goes into 6 evenly 2 times with no remainder. And this mod function allows you to check if a number is even by saying mod 2, check if it's equal to 0. Because any number that's even, when you check the mod against 2, it should have no remainder. And that's how you can check for something being even. So that's another example of a list comprehension. And finally, you can also do an if-else statement in a list comprehension, but keep in mind, at a certain point, you're really going to be sacrificing readability, and that's also a big part of Python. So if you find yourself having trouble to figure out how to put something in a list comprehension, just use a for loop instead. It's almost always just as efficient as list comprehension. you'll find yourself using list comprehensions as you get more advanced in Python. Don't feel forced to constantly have to use them as you're just learning about Python. So we'll show one last more complex example. We'll say my list x if x mod 2 is equal to 0, else not even string for x in range 0 to 10. And this sort of syntax is a bit strange at first to learn because you just learned that if you only have a single if statement, the if statement comes after this element for element in iterable statement. However, if you're using an if-else statement, that actually needs to come first before you say for iterable in or for element in iterable. So that's what's a little bit weird about starting to learn how to do more complex tasks in list comprehension format. And just to really make it clear, if you're having trouble figuring out how to do something in a list comprehension, just go ahead and use the for loop we used at the beginning, because that will always work and it's always going to be a lot more readable. So if we check out my list, now I have evens and then strings not even, where mod 2 did not equal 0. All right, that's it for list comprehensions. You'll find these used often for little quick jobs in other people's code, so it's important that you learn how to read them, but don't worry too much right now about having to always write them. Excellent work so far. I'll see you at the next lesson.